Welcome to part 7 in this series of videos where we build a birthday reminders application using Blazor Server. In this part we move on from basically creating the foundations of our application, setting out the database, adding the Syncfusion controls and things like that, and actually get to add a list for family and friends and a grid and dialog to display the list and to add people to the application. This is the screen we should finish up with today. We've got a list for people here, and we've got a toolbar above the list where we can click add and open up a dialog box where we will be able to enter details of the person that we want to record the birthday for. We won't actually get as far as saving the record in this video. That'll be coming along in the next video. So let's have a look and see how we can start creating this. This is the home page or index page from the standard Microsoft template provided for a Blazor server application. And it's this page that we're going to replace what we've got here with a list of people and their birthdays. So let's have a look at the code. This is the code for the standard template page, and we're going to start off slowly and gradually build up details for this page. So I've got some pre-prepared code, so I'm just going to copy and paste and then explain what's what. What we have here is a page directive just pointing to the index page, a page title that says birthday reminders, and this is going to appear in the tab at the top of a browser. We're going to be using Blazor birthdays reminders data, and we're injecting the person service so we can actually get details of the people. Then within the div we've got an H3 header saying birthday reminders, and this is the bit where it gets interesting. We're going to use a Syncfusion grid, SF grid, and the data source is going to be people, and we'll see where that comes from in a little while. We've then got grid columns, and then within the grid columns tags we've got the individual grid columns. So the first grid column, the field is going to be derived from or the person first name, so we're going to show the first name there, and the header text for the column is going to say first name, and we're going to have it text aligned left, and the width is going to be 20. These aren't in any particular units of measure, they're just relative. But for my own sanity, I've made them add up to 100, but they don't need to be. Then we've got the person's last name, and then date of birth. Now the date of birth is slightly different. You'll see here we've got a format of D and a column type of date. This will make sure that the format of the date is shown correctly, and I've also aligned it to the center. That's really so it doesn't butt up to the next item, which is the person to send the reminder to. So this bit here is the Syncfusion grid, and the important bits are the linking to the data source of people. Now in the code here, as you can see, it starts off very simply. We've just got an enumerable of the person object, which we're calling people, and that's what's populating the data source here. And on initialization of the page, we're just populating the people with that list from the people service person list, which is getting all the people that we've got in there. So if we run this now, we aren't going to see anything because we haven't got anything in the database. I'm not sure how that crept in, but it'll demonstrate that we are getting something. sign in. And we've got our grid. We haven't got any records to display. One could, of course, go into SQL Management Studio, SQL Server Management Studio, and manually add some records, but I'm going to resist that temptation, but there's no reason why you shouldn't do that if you want to. So that's the basic grid. Right, back to the code. What we want to do next is to add a toolbar. So we've got a method of allowing the users to add, edit, or delete a contact or person. So what I'm going to do is, as before, I've got some code which I'm just going to replace the whole of the code we've already got on index with this. And then I'll explain what we've got here. The only difference, well, not the only difference, the difference is that the grid, we've now got this extra item here that says toolbar, and we're calling it toolbar items. And we've got grid events. So this allows us, when we click on a toolbar, to do something. So we've called it toolbar click handler, and the item that we're going to be using is person. So that will display, well, that'll handle the toolbar once we've added it. And then down here, we've declared the toolbar items, and we've just called it toolbar items, and it's a list of item model. And when we populate, or when we start open the page on initialized async, we're adding the toolbar items. So it's toolbar items dot add new item model, and we've got text, add, edit, and delete. We're putting a tooltip for them all, and we've got some prefix icons. These are all standard Syncfusion prefixes. Then we've got this new method down here, which is the toolbar click handler. This is, again, standard Syncfusion stuff, and what we're saying is that if the argument being passed in the text is add, we're going to add some code here for adding a record. Similarly, we're going to be adding some code here for editing a record and code here for deleting it. So running it once again, we'll see what this looks like. So as before, we've got the list, no records to display, but we do have this toolbar at the top with add, edit, and delete. It doesn't do anything yet, but it is there ready and waiting. So let's add something that'll get these things working. I've got some text pre-prepared, so let's have a look at that. The first thing we need to do is to add a dialog. And we're going to be using a Syncfusion dialog to allow this to work. So I'll copy and paste that, and I'm going to put it in index, and I'm going to place it outside this div here. And again, I'll just try and explain what we've got here. It's a Syncfusion dialog, and we're giving it a name of dialog add edit person. It's going to be modal. That means it'll just pop up over the top of whatever screen we've got there, i.e. the list of people. We're defining its width. We're showing the close icon, i.e. the little cross in the top right-hand corner. And we're setting its visibility, to start with anyway, to false. So it's kind of lurking in the background. We've got this item here called dialog templates, and that allows us to put a header in with some text. So we're going to effectively replace this at header text with add a contact or edit a contact or whatever we want to have in there. Then we've got the edit form. This is the important bit. And we're going to have a model called @person_add_edit. And on valid submit, it's going to have an event called person save. Then we've got 3 or 4 fields here. We've got a text box that's going to be enabled, so the person will be able to type into it, the user will be able to type into it, and the placeholder is going to say first name. Now the placeholder is the description that's going to be displayed to the user, and float label type is going to define where first name is, and I've got float label type always, and that will put it always above the text box. The alternatives are always, which is what I'm going to select here, auto, and that will put first name in the text box until we start typing, and then it'll move above it, or we can have never, so it never shows, but always is what I want here. And we're going to bind it to the person_add_edit model, which we haven't got to defining yet or declaring, and this is going to be the person's first name. The next text box is the person's last name. Then we have a date picker for their date of birth. So the TV value is date time. The placeholder is going to be date of birth, and we're going to be binding it to the person's date of birth. And lastly, we've got the placeholder for send reminders to, and this is going to be the email address to whom the reminder should be sent. And you'll see here that unlike the others, I've set that enabled to be false. So I don't want the user to be typing into this field. What we'll eventually be doing is getting the logged in user's email and completing this section automatically. So that's the bulk of the dialog box, but we've got 2 buttons at the bottom, a submit button and a close dialog button, and those events we'll need to define further down in the code. So that is the add edit form. Nothing here changes, well, right, we haven't got round to that yet. So that's the add edit form. If I go back to the text, the other things we need to do are we need to declare these items. So I'll just copy that. And I'll put it after here. Doesn't matter really where it goes, so long as it's at the top somewhere. So I'm declaring the SF dialog. If you recall, I referred to it as dialog add edit person, so it's just being defined here as, or declared as that. We're declaring a person object called person add edit as a new person add edit person object, and the string for the header text I'm setting to just be an empty string effectively. Next, we have to have the toolbar handler. Now, the toolbar handler at the moment just said code for adding goes here. So what I want to do now is just copy that bit, and I'll paste that into the here. So this is setting the person add edit object to a new person, and this is going to ensure that whenever we add, we get the form is always going to be blank, and the header text, which is going to appear at the top of the dialog box, is going to say add a contact, and this await this dialog add edit person show is going to actually reveal the dialog box. The default was that it was going to be visible false. This turns it into visible yes, basically. Next item, we do need to add these items for dealing with the dialog box when the person either clicks save or close. So I'll copy that and I'll add it down at the bottom here after this method. We haven't got any code in here yet, so this is where we'll be inserting a person and closing the dialog. So if what we do here, when we close the dialog, it hides it and then it refreshes the data grid and it forces the state has changed to recheck the person list. Next, we want to put a default date of birth in. The way we do that is to copy this line here and in the toolbar here, I'll add it after that line. So the reason for this is that if we didn't do that, we would end up with a default date of birth as the first of the first of the first. And we certainly don't want that. That should be person date of birth. The next thing is, well, let's run it. Let's run the system as we've got it at the moment. So we've got our grid, we've got our toolbars, and if I click add, up pops our dialog box with the header text of add a contact. We can enter a first name, enter a last name, and date of birth I've defaulted to the 31st of December 2000. This was a bit of a random date. I don't think there's any really suitable date that we could put in there, but that kind of gives the user the right sort of feeling. But notice under here, send reminder to is blank, and save doesn't do anything yet, and cancel doesn't do anything yet. Well, cancel does work, so let's cancel it. Right, back to the code then. And we'll deal with that blank send reminder to. Now, I want the send reminder to go to be completed with the email address of whoever is actually logged in. And to do this was quite complicated, and I'm offering this without very much explanation. It took me quite a while to find it, and all I can say in my defense is it seems to work, and I'll see if I can explain it. So I'll copy that, and we'll put it at the top of the index page under these other declarations. So that goes at the top. I need to declare a string for the user email. So that goes anywhere here will do. And I also need to declare these two items. And I'll put that immediately under the items here. And then at the top of on initialized async, we want this information, this code. I'm going to put it at the very top. And what that's doing is, I mean, in theory, we should never get the auth state equals null. So the principal is the user logged in, and then a claim is their kind of properties. So if the claim type is emails, we should be able to populate user email with the claim value. Again, I had terrible trouble with this, and I created a string called claim type and added all this to it just to see what was coming back from the authentication state. And from that, I did discover that the emails was populated. If you want to see what comes back, if you uncomment that and declare a string called claim type and put it somewhere on the form, you should be able to see what's coming back. But lastly, we want to add that to the dialog box for the logged in user. So I'll copy that and I'll place it in the toolbar handler. So this is the toolbar handler. Let's have it after here. So the person add edit, send reminder to should be populated by the email user. Let's have a go at running it. We won't be able to save it, but we should be able to see the user's name being filled in. So I'm logging in as Christopher Bell at blazercode.uk. I can click add, and you'll see that I can put in a first name, a last name, date of birth, and send reminder to is completed with my email address. Just to recap, the reason I wanted to have this was to make sure that the users couldn't log in and put somebody else's email address there. I didn't want anyone kind of playing tricks and sending, it's Mickey Mouse's birthday on the 1st of April and sending it to all and sundry. I didn't want them to have that ability to send reminders to anyone other than themselves. So this is how we're going to control that. Right, we still can't save it. But that's what we're going to get into in the next video. We've made quite a lot of progress in this video, but there's quite a long way to go still. But as I say, next time we will be saving records, editing records, and deleting records. Thank you very much for watching this video, and hopefully the next video will be coming along relatively soon. Thank you very much.